don't have time much. 15 minutes. The problem is we lived in a rural town with a population of about 8,000 and that didn't have a mass transit system. We needed that car so I could get to school and so she could get to work and take night classes. She was hell bent on changing her life circumstances, found a workaround through the aid to dependent child program. She arranged for our check to go to my grandmother who signed it over to her, but that didn't make life easy. How far can a $123 really go? I vividly recall one night we were so broke we drove home so on a gas tank that we was nearly empty to a bare refrigerator and a past due electric bill with no money in the bank. Then I remembered that we had two mason jars filled with pennies and other loose change. I grabbed them off the shelf. Mom, let's count our change. She smiled. Growing up, her father had taught her to pick up the change she found on the street. He was molded by the Great Depression and knew what it was like to be down and out. You never know when you might need it, he'd say. When we live in hell carrying home thousands of dollars every night, the notion that we would ever run out of money sounded ludicrous. But my mother retained her childhood habit. Students used to belittle her for it, but now it was time to see how far found money could take us. We dumped that change out on the living room floor and counted on enough to cover the electric bill, fill the gas tank, and buy groceries. We even had enough to buy burgers as hard at Hardee's on the way home. These were dark times, but we were managing barely. My mother missed Tunis Jr. terribly, but she was pleased that I was adjusting and making friends. I had a good year at school, and from our first night in Indiana, I hadn't wet the bed once. It seemed that I was healing out my demons weren't gone. They were dormant, and when they came back, they hit hard. Third grade was a shock to my system, not just because we had regular and cursive when I was still getting the hang of reading block letters, but because our teacher, Miss D, was nothing like Sister Catherine. Our class was still small. We had about 20 kids total, split between third and fourth grade. But she didn't handle it nearly as well and wasn't interested in taking the extra time I required. My trouble started with the standardized tests we took during our first couple of weeks of class. Mine came back a mess. I was still way behind the other kids and I had trouble building on lessons from the previous days, let alone the previous academic year. Sister Catherine considered similar signs as cues to dedicate more time with her weakest student, and she challenged me daily. Miss D looked for a way out. Within the first month of school, she told my mother that I belong in a different school, one for special students. Every kid knows what special means. It means you are about to be stigmatized for the rest of your damn life. It means that you are not normal. The threat alone was a trigger, and I developed a stutter almost overnight. My thought to speech flow was jammed up with stress and anxiety, and it was at its worst in school. Imagine being the only black kid in class in the entire school and enduring the daily humiliation of also being the dumbest. I felt like everything I tried to do or say was wrong, and it got so bad that instead of responding and skipping like scratch vinyl, whenever the teacher called my name, I often chose to keep quiet. It was all about the limiting exposure to safe face. Miss D didn't even attempt to empathize. She went straight to frustration and vented it by yelling at me sometimes when she was leaning down, her hand on the back of my chair, her face just inches from my own. She had no idea the Pandora's box was tearing open. Once school was safe harbor, the one place I knew I couldn't be hurt, but in Indiana it morphed into a torture chamber. Miss D wanted me out of her classroom, and the administration supported her until my mother fought for me. The principal agreed to keep me enrolled if my mother signed off on time with a speech therapist and put me into group therapy with the local shrink that they recommended. The psychologist's office was adjacent to a hospital, which was exactly where you would want to put it if you were trying to make a little kid doubt yourself. It was like a bad movie. The shrink set up 7 chairs in a semicircle around him, but some of the kids wouldn't or couldn't sit still. One child wore a helmet and banged his head against the wall repeatedly. Another kid stood up while the doctor was mid sentence, walked toward a far corner of the room, and pissed in the trash can. The kid sitting next to me wasn't the most normal person in the group, and he had set his own house on fire. I can remember staring up at the shrink on my first day thinking there's no way I belong here. My experience kicked my social anxiety up several notches. My stutter was out of control. My hair started falling out, and more white splotches bloomed on my dark skin. The doctor diagnosed me as an ADHD case and prescribed Ritalin, but my problems were more complex. I was suffering from toxic stress. The type of physical and emotional abuse that I was exposed to has been proven to have range of side effects on young children because in our early years the brain grows and develops so rapidly. If during those years your father is an evil motherfucker, hell bent on destroying everyone in his house, stress spikes, and when those spikes occur frequently enough, you can draw a line across the peaks. That's your new baseline. It puts kids in a permanent fight or flight mode. Fight or flight can be a great tool when you are in danger because it amps you up to battle through or sprint from trouble, but it's no way to live. I'm not the type of guy to try to explain everything with science, but facts are facts. I read that some pediatricians believe toxic stress does more damage to kids than polio or meningitis. I know firsthand that it leads to learning disabilities and social anxiety because, according to doctors, it limits language development and memory, which makes it difficult for even the most gifted students to recall when what they have already learned. Looking at the long game, when kids like me grow up, they face an increased risk for clinical depression, heart disease, obesity, and cancer, not to mention smoking, alcoholism, and drug abuse. Those raised in abusive households have an increased probability of being arrested as a juvenile by 53%. Their odds of committing a violent crime as an adult are increased by 38%. I was the poster child of that generic term we have all heard before, at risk youth. My mother wasn't the one raising a thug. Look at the numbers, and it's clear. If anyone put me on the destructive path, it was David Goggins. I didn't stay in group therapy for long, and I didn't take Ritalin either. My mom picked me up after my second session, and I sat in the front car seat of her car, wearing a thousand-yard stare. Mom, I am not going back, I said. These boys are crazy, she agreed. But I was still a damaged kid, and while they were proven interventions on the best way to teach and manage kids who suffer from toxic stress, it's fair to say that Miss D didn't get those memos. I can't blame her for her own ignorance. The science wasn't nearly as clear in the 1980s as it is now. All I know is Visitor Catherine toiled in the trenches with the same malformed kid that Mrs. Deal dealt with, but she maintained a high expectations and didn't let her frustration overwhelm her. She had the mindset of look everybody learns in a different way and we're gonna find out how you learn. She deduced that I need repetition, that I need to solve the same problems over and over again in a different way to learn. And she knew that took time. Miss D was all about productivity. She was saying keep up or get out. Meanwhile, fell backed into a corner. I knew that if I didn't show some improvement, I would eventually be shipped out to that special black hole for sure good. So I found a solution. I started cheating my ass off. Studying was hard, especially with my fucked up brain, but I was a damn good cheat. I copied my friends' homework and scanned my neighbors' work during tests. I even copied the answers on the standardized tests that didn't have any impact on my grades. It worked. My raising test scores placated my Miss D, and my mother stopped getting calls from school. I thought I'd solve a problem with when really I was creating new ones by taking the path of least resistance. My coping mechanism confirmed that I would never learn squat at school and that I would never catch up, which pushed me closer toward a flunked out fate. The saying grace of those early years in Brazil was that I was way too young to understand the kind of prejudice I would soon face in my new hick hometown. Whenever you're the only one of your kind, you're in danger of being pushed towards toward the margins, suspected and disregarded, bullied and mistreated by ignorant people. That's just the way life is. Especially back then, and by the time that reality kicked me in the throat, my life had already become a full-fledged fuck you fortune cookie whenever I cracked it open. I got the same message. You were born to fail. My challenge one, my bad cards arrived early and stuck around a while, but everyone gets challenged in life at some point. What was your bad hand? Acha. Chapter 2, Truth Hurts. Wilmoth Irving was a new beginning up until he met my mother and asked for her number. All I knew was misery and struggle. When the money was good, our lives were defined by trauma. Once we were free of my father, we were swept under by our own PTSD level dysfunction and poverty. Then, when I was in fourth grade, she met Wilmot, a successful carpenter and general contractor from Indianapolis. She was attracted to his easy smile and laid back style. There was no violence in him. He gave us permission to exhale. With him around, it felt like we had some support, like something good was finally happening to us. She laughed when they were together. Her smile was bright and real. She stood up a little straighter. He gave her pride and made her feel beautiful again. As for me, Wilmot became as close to a healthy father figure as I have ever had. He didn't coddle me. He didn't tell me he loved me or any of the fake ass sappy shit, but he was there. Basketball had been an obsession of mine since grade school. I was the core of my relationship with my best friend Johnny Nicholas, and Wilmot had bad game. He and hit he and I hit the courts together all the time. He showed me moves and tuned up my defense discipline and helped me develop a jump shot. The three of us celebrated birthdays and holidays together, and the summer before 8th grade, he got down on one knee and asked my mother to make it official. Wilmot lived in Indianapolis, and our plan was to move in with him the following summer. Though he wasn't nearly as rich as Tunis, he made a nice living, and we looked forward to life again. Then in 1989, the day after Christmas, everything stopped. We hadn't made the full time move to India yet, and he'd spend Christmas Day with us at my grandparents' place in Brazil. The next day, he had a football game in his men's league, and he invited me to sub for one of his teammates. I was so excited I packed my bags 2 days early, but that morning he told me I couldn't come after all. I'm gonna keep you back here till this time, little David, he said. I dropped my head and sighed. He could tell I was upset and tried to reassure me. Your mom is gonna drive up in a few days and we can ball together. Walden. I nodded reluctantly, but I wasn't raised to pry into affairs of adults, and I knew I wasn't owed an explanation or makeup game. My mom and I, my mother and I watched from the front porch as he backed out of the carport, smiled, and gave us the crisp single wave of his. Then he drove off. It was the last time we'd ever seen him alive. He played in his men's league game that night as planned and drove home alone to the house with the white lines. Whenever he gave directions to friends, families, or delivery guys, that's how he always described his ranch style house. It's a driveway framed by two white lion sculptures elevated on pillars. He pulled between them and into the garage where he could enter the house directly, oblivious to the danger moving in front of him from behind. He never did close that garage door. They'd be staking him out for hours, waiting for a window as he climbed out from the driver's side door, they stepped from the shadows and fired from the close range. He was shot 5 times in the chest. When he dropped to the floor of his garage, the gunman stepped over him and delivered a kill shot right between his eyes. Wilmer's father lived a few blocks away, and when he drove by the White Lions in the morning, he noticed his son's garage door open, and into the garage where he sobbed over door open and knew everything was wrong. He walked up to the driveway and into the garage where the sobbed over where he sobbed over his dead son. Wilmot was just 43 years old. I was still at my grandmother's house. When Wilmot's mother called moments later, she hung up and motioned me to her side to break the news. Okay, time's it up. Time is up. Yeah. Yes. Adios.